Look out, something is going to get you tonight. Let's talk about the thing that's going to get you tonight. Welcome to the Happy Harvest Horror Show.
Welcome to the podcast. I'm Corrie.
And I'm Brian, and this is the Happy Harvest Horror Show. And this is our Halloween episode. Yay! We made it! Yay! Happy Halloween, everyone. Hopefully you're listening to this on Halloween or after, but that's okay because every day is Halloween. And we have a really fun Halloween topic to talk about today.
Yeah, very, very on the nose for our Halloween special this year, our Halloween episode. But before we get into it, we got to do it. I mean, it's big time spooky week. It's the big spooky week.
The spooky week.
Brian, how spooky was your week?
It was pretty spooky. In other years, in normal situations in the world, I think this week would have been a lot spookier. But we are in 2020. It is what it is. So my spooky week has been a lot of scary movies and other things. So I've been going back and I've been watching some movies. And I was really excited to bring this up because I went back and watched I think it was 2006 or 2008, House of Wax movie with Paris Hilton. Do you remember this? And Chad Michael Murray and your favorite guy from Supernatural. Or maybe the other guy. I'm not sure which guy is your favorite from Supernatural. 50-50 for your favorite guy.
I honestly don't know if I ever saw the movie, but I remember this. I remember it being a moment for sure.
It was a moment. In the moment, I think, if I remember right, was everyone just bagging on it. Everyone hated this movie.
Yeah.
And it was a joke, especially with the Paris Hilton angle of it. I mean, the marketing was like, watch Paris Hilton die in this movie. So, but anyway, I was just at Halloween. There's all this, these specials going on. And I was like, I'll go check that out. I want to see that. And I was going to double feature it with the Vincent Price one.
Oh, fun.
Yeah. So anyway, I just went back and watched it. And I'm here to report that movie fucking slaps. It's so good. It's so much fun. It takes like a good half hour, 45 minutes to lay ground pieces and kind of stumbles there. But once it's in, the atmosphere is top notch. You're in this deserted town and you're finding out that all these people and they're just all wax figures, and not just wax figures. They're real people that have been made into wax figures, been killed and made into wax figures. And God, it's so good. And it's so fun. And I think even Paris Hilton, I think she did great. And she did exactly what the movie was calling for. And she did an awesome job. And I think looking back, that was just some baby back misogyny, hating on Paris Hilton,
Yeah, definitely
100%. She did great. And I thought the movie was fun. The finale is nuts. I don't know, I was sitting there kind of blown away, why does everyone hate this movie? This is a blast. So anyway, going back, House of Wax, very fun.
I'm gonna have to check it out. I love some earlier 2000s nostalgia. I'm all about it.
It was a moment, the 2000s horror was trying to figure out what was what, but yeah, it was cool. It was real fun. It was some genuinely gnarly kills in there. Solid slasher. If you're looking for a good slasher for this season, I don't know, go back, go check it out, and then let me know if you hated it still. But I thought it was so much fun. Speaking of going back as well, I forgot to mention this in our 90s throwback episode a few weeks ago, but I went back and rewatched the Backstreet's Back music video.
Yes.
I cannot believe we didn't mention this in that music video.
1000% yes.
It's just the dance in the Casper ballroom with the every Backstreet Boy is a different monster. It is a riot. Going back and rewatching that, I'm like,
classic.
Even our
so
pop
good.
music loved Halloween when we were kids.
Yeah. I mean, I think they were doing a 90s thriller thing, I think is kind of the angle that BSB was going for.
Sure. But it was also it was each kind of a universal monster sort of theme. Everyone, it was in a big, scary. So that was rad. What else? No, we've just been watching a lot of scary movies. Been going through Shudder. I love Shudder. There was a new anthology film called The Mortuary Collection, which was very fun, very good. If anyone has Shudder, go check it out. And if you don't, what are you doing? Go get Shudder and go check it out, because
Shudder really needs to start paying us.
I will shill for them forever. Whatever. I think just like at long last we have a destination that's producing content and not just acquiring great content. I love it. Yeah, the Mortuary Collection, super fun. He's like this mortician, main character, and he considers himself a curator of stories more than a mortician. And so
Oh.
there's a woman that comes for a job because there's a help wanted sign, and he tells these stories, and they get increasingly more wild and crazy. Usually in anthology movies, the through line is really difficult. Sometimes there isn't even a through line, sometimes it's like here's just a bunch of stories, and sometimes it's super forced and all that. I thought
Mm-hmm.
this one, and throughout all the stories, they all felt like they existed in the same world. The aesthetic was great. It looked awesome. It was filmed so well. So Mortuary Collection, really like.
Interesting.
That's what I was up to. How spooky was your week?
Oh, pretty spooky. I gotta say it.
Mm-hmm.
First off, last weekend, I'm in California right now, and me and my lady friends, my gal pals, we got like a little house in the middle of nowhere, basically, in a vineyard, and hung out all weekend, the four of us, and we did like a dry run of our Halloween costumes.
Mm-hmm.
And took a bunch of cool photos in a really just beautiful scenic area in our Four Horsemen costumes.
Mm-hmm.
Very pleased with how those turned out. Very spooky. We're gonna, be in them again on Halloween, obviously, but it was kind of the chance to get the like good photos and like do it up.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then yesterday, I'm staying with my friend in San Francisco, and we were watching BuzzFeed Unsolved.
Of course.
Love BuzzFeed Unsolved. And they were at the Winchester Mystery House. And I was like, I've never been there. Like, I want to go to the Winchester Mystery House. And Jenny was like, I haven't been there since like middle school. Like, it's been so long. And then very quick impulse buy, looked it up, not even knowing if they were going to be like open or what the situation was going to be. And then they were, and then it was like, we have to go. So yeah, we went to the Winchester Mystery House and
Wow.
toured that shit, and it's weird. I'm a little jealous because apparently this time of year they do late nighttime flashlight tours, like self-guided
Oh,
flashlight tours.
that would be so cool.
They were all sold out because we were like gonna do that, but instead we went at the very spooky hour of 3 p.m. on a Wednesday.
The daytime witching hour, right?
Yes, exactly. But it's a cool house. I mean, it's a beautiful house, but it's weird, there's stairs that lead to nowhere. There's little cabinets that you open and they're not actually cabinets. Like there's
Mm-hmm.
just little like drop-offs and doors that lead to nowhere and lots of weird things.
And for those unaware, the Winchester House is you want to say a little bit more about it, what it is? Because the story of it is, I think, maybe the spookiest part.
So the Winchester Mystery House was built in very, very end of the 19th century
Mm-hmm.
by one Sarah Winchester, and she experienced a lot of grief. Basically, her husband, who was in charge of the Winchester rifle empire, basically died, and then also she had a baby that died very, very, very young, did not live very long, and so she was on her own with a lot of money. And this was the end of the 19th century, so spiritualism huge, very hot for people,
Mm-hmm.
especially people with money, to be getting psychic readings and having seances and stuff like this. And she had been told on several occasions that like she was being haunted by spirits, and one of her psychic readings, like one of her readers told her that what she needed to do was continuously build onto the house,
Mm-hmm.
because it'll confuse the spirits, basically, like all the hammering, all the noise, it'll
Mm-hmm.
confuse the spirits. And then it became this process of intentionally like building a very confusing house in
Yes.
order to keep the spirits lost and confused. And that was like her life, pretty much. It was just, yeah, her whole life was spent in this house, very spooked, very paranoid, and just continuously building on with no master plan. And since then, there's lots of stories of interesting activity. Some people say that the ghost of Sarah Winchester haunts the house, as well as the ghosts of people she employed, the people that lived there.
Right. The souls that haunt it were said to be, those spirits were said to be everyone that had died from a Winchester rifle.
Yes, that's one of the stories.
One of the
yes.
stories, which is a lot of people. There's a really
Yes.
great, I mean, it's definitely historical fiction, but there's a great graphic novel called House of Penance that's all about her.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's exactly what you're saying. It was like this kind of psychological thriller of her needing hammers to constantly be going
Yeah.
and needing to keep building to keep them at bay as a way of, like the title says, paying penance for all the ill that the family business had brought. So
Yeah. And I was also told, I don't know if you know more about this because you're more of the movie buff, but there was a movie starring Helen Mirren. And it was apparently terrible.
I confess I've never seen it because of that. I heard it was just very abysmal. But it's not hard to find. I think it's on many streaming services. So
which is just such a bummer because it seems like the story, there's just so much there. Kind of going back to our conversation with the last episode with like Bly Manor and everything. There's so much to that story that's ripe with like multiple kinds of hauntings, right? Like you have the actual haunting, but there's also like a psychological haunting that's going on. Like there's a grief haunting. There's like multiple. It just seems like there's so much potential. And obviously Helen Mirren
should have been a golden.
It should have, but from what I heard, it was not. I haven't seen it, so I can't say. But
such a shame. Well, it lives on in the graphic novel sense. So if that's a medium that you enjoy, go check it out there because I thought that was a success. That was good.
Yeah. Also, if you want to see my little trip to the Winchester Mystery House, I made a TikTok on the Art History Babes TikTok. So if you're a TikTok kid, you're a TikTok teen out there,
TikToker, if you're
one
a
of
cluck,
those, if you're a TikTok youths in the world,
you're a talker or a ticker.
Yeah, you can go to @Art History Babes on TikTok and see our fun little time we had yesterday, our spooky fun time. Also, if you're in the area, just letting you know, they were clutch in terms of COVID precautions, very spaced out, tons of hand sanitizer everywhere, all the windows open, like keeping things very like mask required. Like, so I felt very safe in the whole thing, which is also nice. I was there to get haunted, not to get a disease.
There's a difference.
So yeah, if you're in the area and want to do something kind of spooky and fun and also historic, lots of information, it's kind of like a museum in there in a lot of ways. So
yeah.
It's a cool spot. San Jose, California, Winchester Mystery House.
Hell yes.
Yeah.
I'm jealous. I can't wait for next year. Hopefully everything will be good. Everything will be good everywhere. Please, Jesus, come on.
Oh, you're praying to Jesus now. Wow.
Baby Jesus, please help.
Before we transition into our topic, which I'm very excited to talk about our topic today. I think it's just going to be like a fun history lesson kind of deep dive. But quick, want to shout out our newest supporter, Erica.
Yes, Erica, thank you.
What's up, Erica? We appreciate you. And yeah, if you'd like to become a supporter of Happy Harvest Horror Show, head over to anchor.fm/HHHS/support.
Yes, please.
They make it super easy for you to just kind of throw your coins at us, throw your extra change at us so we can keep making spooky content all year round, because this is an all year round Halloween podcast.
Yes. Yeah, I'm excited. They're our first episode after Halloween.
I know, me too. I'm like, that'll be a interesting shift. I'm excited.
But there's so much to talk about. So much in the spooky world, so much that's all year round. I can't wait for the Christmas spooky stuff.
Oh, yeah.
That's going to be fun.
That's going to be fun.
There's undoubtedly some Thanksgiving spooky shit.
Yeah. I mean, there's always spooky shit. There's always spooky shit hanging out.
So stick with us. It's going to be fun.
Yeah. But for today, for our Halloween 2020 episode, we are doing a deep dive on the history of trick-or-treating.
that little tradition? What's up with that?
What's up with that? What is that thing?
So we're going to get into it. But first, we should get a quick word from our sponsors.
Hey, everyone.
Hey there. We just wanted to take a moment to tell you about Anchor. It is how we have made our podcast, and it's totally free. There is no minimum listenership to make money, which is awesome.
Ooh. Yeah, Anchor is really a great platform. As someone who I'm a dual podcaster. I have another podcast and we are part of a network over there. And so we use a different platform. And so I have comparative experience. And when I came to the Anchor platform, I was really happy and really impressed by how easy it is to use. I really love the interface. Like, it's so clean and easy to understand, and you get all of your analytics very clearly, which you'd think would be like a given on podcasting, but it really isn't. It really is just an awesome platform, and it was so easy to get started on.
Yeah, listen, this is dumb how easy it is. We record an episode, we click upload, and it just sends it out to Spotify, sends it out to Apple. It's so easy, and it's completely free. So if you guys are interested in starting your own podcast in this quarantine spooky time, download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started.
Yeah, I mean, get creative, get Anchor.
Yeah.
We're back.
Ooh.
And we're going to give you the rundown on trick-or-treating. Trick or treating.
Yeah, it's a fun history. Going back and refreshing on what led to the practice of trick-or-treating today. It's an unlikely path, and it's pretty fun.
Yeah, and it definitely has influences coming in from multiple directions, and yeah, it's interesting. So maybe just to kind of, start out, let's explain what trick-or-treating is in case it's something a listener maybe isn't super familiar with or didn't grow up with.
If you are unfamiliar, I feel so sad because it's such a staple of my childhood. Trick-or-treating is the act of dressing up in your Halloween costume and with a bag for goodies, going door to door, ringing the doorbell or knocking, and when they answer, you say, "Trick or treat," and they give you a treat, or they should. That's it. And then that's the holiday. Yeah.
And that's what happens. And it's really it's that simple, a simple transaction, really.
It's a business transaction. I have brought you myself in my costume. Give me candy.
That means you give me candy. And yeah, it varies what you can get. Sometimes when you're roaming the rich neighborhoods, you get the full bars. Like that's always a good time. I was one with trick-or-treating. I would do for my bag, I would decorate a pillowcase.
Yeah, pillowcase. That's what I did too.
Yeah, because you can like really, really get a good haul in a pillowcase because they're so strong.
Mm.
Yeah, that was the way to do it. Those were the serious trick-or-treaters, like us with the pillowcases.
Fill this thing up.
And we did.
It's funny to think about trick or treat like paraphernalia when you were kids, because there are so many places now, antique Instagrams and stuff like that, that will pay lots of money for whatever pail or pumpkin thing that you had at that time. Collecting is such a thing, and I wish I had any of my little pumpkin pails, any of my little jack-o'-lantern flashlights or anything, because it's shocking how much money people will spend on that kind of stuff today.
Totally. So yeah, that's basically what it is, at least, what it was in our childhood, pretty much what it is today. It's a fun tradition, and it has some really interesting roots. It goes back. Starting with the Celts, of course.
You remember them?
Remember those guys? If you listen to our Samhain episode, some of the things that were even said in that episode connect to the practice of trick-or-treating. And a lot of historians would trace trick-or-treating back to Celtic tradition, Samhain traditions. The farthest back, just dressing up as spirits was a thing. The Celts would dress up as like evil spirits.
Mhm.
There was an ancient Celtic tradition of disguising oneself with an animal skin
Mhm.
to drive away phantoms.
Mhm.
And often they would also set out food to placate spirits. So
Right.
there was this act of like a treat for the spirits to kind of keep them happy and nourished.
Yeah. I might be off on when I think it was during this time, but souling, do you remember seeing this?
Yes. So it's also called, yes, it's souling. It's also known as mumming.
Mhm.
And this came to be around the 9th century. Basically, the point where Samhain was being Christianized is when this became a thing.
Right.
So we're in that transition period between pagan and Christian. And children, and then also sometimes poorer adults would dress up in costumes. And then they
Mhm.
would go door to door begging for food or money in exchange for songs and prayers. Often these songs and prayers were said on behalf of the dead.
Right. Right. Which is a nice gesture. It's like,
Yeah,
hey,
yeah.
I'll sing your grandma a nice little tune if give me a candied apple.
Exactly. Exactly.
That's what they're eating back then: candied apple and popcorn strings.
Yep.
That's that's not.
Actually, what they would often receive were pastries called soul cakes. So soul was a whole thing. It was souling. The children are often called soulers, and they would get soul cakes.
Tasty.
So we're talking a lot about the soul, and as I mentioned, this is a lot of Christian influence here. So you can kind of see that like religious influence in this act,
Right. Right.
which was essentially, and I'm bringing this up because it'll kind of come up later on when we get to more contemporary, but it started as begging. Like trick or treating started as begging
Right. Right.
in the purest sense. Like, please give me something, I can sing for you in return. I can say a prayer for you in return.
Yeah, and there was also Scotland and Ireland. There were traditions of young people also doing a tradition called guising, where they dressed up in a costume, exactly what we're saying.
Mm-hmm.
But just to further broaden what they would do for the treat, if you want to say treat at that time, they would also tell the people jokes or perform some sort of, we're using quotations here, trick, because they didn't use the word trick, but do some sort of action in exchange for collecting their treat. And this treat usually consisted of fruit, nuts, or coins.
Yeah. So some kind of little jig, something kind of fun.
Mm-hmm. Do you want to move on to a little closer to modern? Well, I guess this isn't modern. This is 16th century, but
Guy Fawkes, is that where
yeah,
you're
that's exactly
going?
where I'm going. Yep. Guy Fawkes, if anyone doesn't know or hasn't seen the movie V for Vendetta, he was a Catholic that led this Catholic-led conspiracy to blow up England's Parliament to remove King James I, a Protestant, from power. This plan did not work. He was he was executed, and they made a whole holiday around him being executed in this gunpowder plot, where on November 5th, British children would wear masks and carry little effigies begging for pennies. They would say, quote, "a penny for the guy." And so, yeah, by the 19th century, these children wearing these masks and carrying these effigies were roaming the streets on the evening of November 5th. So this is just another example of kids in costume asking for things.
Yeah, only this one was in celebration of someone's execution. So that's
Super dark.
Real dark, real dark. But that was that long held tradition. Went on for years and years and trickled over into America, into the United States.
Yeah, and a big reason that trickled in was, we're now jumping to the mid 19th century, and there was a big thing called the Potato Famine, if anyone remembers.
Yes.
Oh, yes, the Potato Famine. Yeah, I know it well. Where more than 1 million Irish and Scottish immigrants immigrated around this time. And when they're immigrating, so are their traditions, what they did and what their family did. So in the mid 19th century, we start seeing new American traditions start popping up, or variations, as it goes down the telephone game of history. As it gets to America, it's now turning into something else.
Totally. That mass immigration led to some of these practices coming over here. It's not, you can't really say that that's fully where trick-or-treating came from. There's kind of a mix of things going on, but elements of it are definitely at play with
Right,
a lot
right.
of the Irish immigrants. Trick-or-treating didn't really show up in the United States until really like the early 1900s. Some
Right.
point to around the 20s, but it was kind of happening before that in certain ways, in a very loose way.
Right, and it was happening, I think this is a big part of it, it was happening because around this time, this night was turning into a night of, mischief, that there were kids everywhere that were using this night as a night of pranks and tricks,
Mhm.
and this was also around the time of the Depression, and around this time, the pranks were awful. They were getting really hard to manage, and I have this quote from a turn of the century guide on boys' crafts that called this night, quote, the only evening on which a boy can feel free to play pranks outdoors without danger of being, quote, pinched. And it is his delight to scare passing pedestrians, ring doorbells, and carry off the neighbors' gates after seeing that his own was unhinged and safely placed in the barn, even if he is suspected, and the next day made to remove the rubbish barricading the doors, lug back the stone carriage step, and climb a tree for the front gate. The punishment is nothing compared with the sports the pranks have furnished them. This is from the book Trick or Treat that I mentioned, I think our Samhain episode, where I talked about it has this great history of Halloween. And this mentions it had become this ritualized thing every year that kids would do these pranks that were, like in this instant, taking off gates and taking them
Mhm.
away.
Yeah. A lot of like what I saw even more so, like kind of went even further than that. Like almost like Halloween was like a purge night to some degree.
It was.
In the early years anyways, like it was even, oftentimes more than just tricks and taking gates off of things. Like there was vandalism, but also violence. Like there was
Yeah.
also a lot of violence, assaults. There would be a lot of assaults. Like it was a scary night, and
Yeah.
the youths just went nutty, like just went wild. So it wasn't so much this like cute fun time to get candy.
Not yet.
Not yet, yeah. In
Not yet.
fact, it was like a scary night of vandalism.
Right. Yeah, the tipping point I have here is 1933, which was dubbed the Black Halloween, where it was so bad that the vandalism was now described being done by, quote, hoodlums instead of kids. The vandalism, instead of taking gates and doing little things, now they were sawing down telephone poles, overturning automobiles, opening fire hydrants to flood the city streets. Like it was 1933 Black Halloween, and that around this time there was maybe a nationwide consensus like we got to figure this out. We got to fix this.
So this is where it gets kind of confusing, or interesting, because and this is something, it's just how history works, right? Is like we like to create a very clean timeline of history and how it all like played out, but usually like shifts and things happen at different times in different places, and it all kind of blends together. And there is a fantastic episode of Drunk History that tells the story of Elizabeth Krebs. And she is a woman from Kansas, I believe, Kansas
Yeah.
or Missouri, who has been considered the mother of Halloween. And according to Drunk History, this is like 1912. So we're talking further back. And Halloween is crazy. Youths are out here wiling and destroying shit. And basically, Elizabeth Krebs is sick of it. So she basically decides to throw like this rager of a Halloween party
Yeah.
for the kids, for the younger people, to kind of get their energy out, to like basically make
Yeah.
them too tired to vandalize shit and like ruin her garden and stuff. So she throws this huge party. You got the bobbing for apples. You got people marching through the street singing songs. I don't really know if there was a trick or treating element to this, but
Not yet. No.
there was this communal party, this communal celebration, like really get out your energy. She did it once, it still didn't work. Kids still destroyed shit. She tried again the second year and it did work. There was a huge difference in the amount of destruction that happened that night
Yeah.
because of this dope party that she threw. And so she is often kind of credited as one of responsible for one of the early examples of basically like a community sanctioned Halloween celebration, or like, yeah, something a little bit more still fun, but like a little cuter, a little safer, a little more like
Yeah,
in everyone's best interest.
exactly. And that was kind of emulated other places too, and by other organizations like towns and other civic groups, kind of like Boy Scouts and YMCA and other civic groups that found these alternatives for something to do. And like you said, they would have parties, costuming, carnivals, contests around this time. And schools also took a huge part in this by entertaining during the Halloween season and by making these basically entire cottage industries, creating little Halloween booklets targeted towards kids and teachers. And in these little booklets, they had these little morality plays of like, hey, Jimmy, are you going to go vandalize tonight? And Jimmy's like, no, I'm going to go to a party. Like, I was,
Sure am not.
sure am not. I'm a good Christian boy. And
I'm gonna
so,
go get some sweets down at City Hall.
don't you know it? Gee, golly, can I come? You bet. And these books were popular from 1915 to 1950. And like I said, they featured these poems, little plays, and it was part of this big push to keep kids from not thinking of this night as a big prank night, instead of reframing it as like, it's a fun Halloween season. We're going to have these parties and whatnot. And that was all well and good during the day in school. But another big problem is nighttime. That was the time where all the vandalism was happening. So you can keep them distracted in school during the day, like, but how do you keep them at night? And exactly what you're saying, they would have all these house parties where you could go, but remember, again, this was during the Great Depression, so resources were not widely available. Everyone wasn't throwing these ragers. So the solution was people would come up with a kind of house-to-house party pooling system where they would pool their resources together, and kids were guided from one house to the next, each have a different theme, and they would go through that throughout the night. Which is, you guessed it, this is early trick-or-treating.
Boom, trick-or-treating, that's what you got. That's what that is.
Dude, that's what you have.
Which really is, yeah, ultimately what trick-or-treating is. It's like a giant citywide potluck of candy.
You love to see it.
Yeah, that just like everyone kind of agrees on. And this is interesting too, because I read that in the earlier years, so in the early years when it's still kind of a mess, there's still a lot of mischief going on, before trick-or-treating was the well-known tradition it is today. It was really common for children to have to like explain to adults what was going on. Imagine you're just a middle-aged person in the early 1900s in your home, and some small children knock on your door. You open it, they're in weird costumes, creepy costumes, and they're like, oh, you're supposed to give us candy.
Didn't you hear, Gramps? You gotta give him candy. Fork it over.
It's a pretty weird thing, right? Like,
Yeah,
if you're not used to it being a thing, if it hasn't become ubiquitous yet, it's a pretty odd thing. But that's kind of how it worked in the beginning. Like, a lot of people didn't really know about it until there were kids at their front door, and then they'd find a treat in their house for them. I think there probably were instances of like, it was a little more threatening even, like, give us a treat.
Trick.
Yeah, exactly. Give us a treat, or like, we're going to stomp on your rose bushes or something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so over time, it became this more communal thing, like you said, like a potluck type thing. There was also an early backlash against the concept in America because it was seen as begging. And no big shocker there, because we know how Americans feel about poverty.
Oh, yeah.
So there was like an American ethos kind of, backlash, like, we're not going to send our kids around begging door to door, like, because I don't know. That's not the American way.
Well, we were still trying to figure out what the American way was at this time,
Yeah, right.
We were World War II just about to hit it. We were just about to figure out what the American way was. But this was also, it's funny you mentioned too, like, history is not a straight line. It's all over the place. And at the same time as this all was happening, there were other traditions, not even harvest traditions, Christmas traditions up in Canada called bell-snickling. Have you heard about bell-snickling?
I've heard this word.
It's
Oh,
derived.
it's The Office when Dwight is like the Bell-schnickel or whatever.
Yeah,
Remember
yeah,
that?
yeah,
I'm guessing
yeah.
it's related to this concept, most
Maybe
likely.
it's derived from a German mumming tradition. You mentioned mumming already, known as Pelznickel, and Bellsnickling was performed in the eastern areas of the USA and Canada, and consisted of groups costumed participants moving from house to house, offering small tricks in exchange for treats or food or drink. And notably in Nova Scotia specifically, the Bellsnicklers performers would deliberately frighten young children who had been bad that year. So now we're also introducing these elements of fright with this holiday, and this by some attributed to the Halloween trick-or-treating, because a newspaper in 1927 in Alberta, Canada, trick-or-treating was first used, but they didn't mention costumes or anything in that case. It was just the first mention in association with Halloween saying the words trick or treat. And this way made its way through the way northern USA. In Oregon, they started having these trick-or-treat traditions start showing up. And then in 1939, there was an article titled Victim of the Window Soaping Brigade.
Oh.
It refers to trick-or-treating as an age-old Halloween salutation, and made it plain that the practice was a method of subverting rowdy pranksters. So this is the first national instance where we said trick-or-treating, this is what it is. Age-old Halloween tradition, even though we just came up with it. And it was a way to subvert rowdy pranksters.
That's one of the easiest ways to get people to fall in line with new shit, is just say
Exactly.
we've been doing it for a long time. Like, you should probably get on board.
Yeah, it's always been a thing. And we mentioned the door-to-door party, pooling resources and all that. And that resource pooling wasn't needed not long later, because once the World War II came to a close, rationing was over, and luxuries like candy suddenly became available, making a huge push to the Halloween practice of actually giving out candy, because before it was, like we said, it was nuts, it was apples, other treats, and now suddenly we're introducing candy, which is a big part of trick-or-treating.
Candy time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I also read one of my sources couldn't, pinpoint precisely where and when the phrase trick or treat was coined, but they did bring up the custom had been firmly established in American popular culture by 1951, when trick or treating was depicted in the Peanuts comic strip.
Yes.
So, and then also brings up 1952, Disney produced a cartoon called Trick or Treat featuring Donald Duck and his nephews, Huey, Dewey, and Louie.
We know them well.
So it's, just a good example of how traditions really do come to be. Usually there is a point like this where it gets grasped by popular culture in some way, in this sense, a very popular comic strip and then a popular cartoon. Yeah. And then from there, then it's, it's game over after that. It's just
it's game over.
It's game over. Trick or treat is
it's out of the bag.
And always will be from here on out, pretty much.
So talking about the craze of trick-or-treating, it made candy a huge, its third big candy holiday, basically, right? We had Valentine's Day, we had Christmas, and now we have Halloween. Early in 1800s, the early candy that was associated with this day was everyone's favorite, candy corn. And it wasn't widely distributed until 1920, but 1880 is when it first started being made.
Candy corn tastes like it was made in 1880.
But chocolate became the preferred trick-or-treating treat because it was neatly wrapped. And so parents didn't have to make nuts and popcorn balls and apples, that you could just give away these neatly wrapped little candy bars.
Yeah, that is handy. That's definitely helpful. According to history.com, Americans spend an estimated $2.6 billion on candy every Halloween.
That's a lot.
That's a lot of money.
Yeah. And of that 2.6, as of 2009, chocolate made up for $1.9 billion of that. Just chocolate.
Wow.
In 2009, it was reported that chocolate companies sold 598 million pounds of chocolate. And this also, 2009, why do I keep using the word 2009? This was also the year that chocolate beat out Christmas and Valentine's Day as the top US holiday in terms of chocolate sales.
Yes, it's definitely still just, most years Halloween is pretty much neck and neck almost with Christmas in terms of just retail in general, just like as a business, like Halloween as a business. It's considered the number 2, I think, most lucrative holiday, but it's like it's right up there. It's edging in on Christmas.
Mm-hmm. And as the saying says, a rising tide lifts all ships. And also harkening back to our pumpkin spice episode, this brought out a bunch of other people wanting to jump on this. And notably, like the 1950s, when grocery stores started selling trick-or-treat bags. They got on that hype wagon. They're like, well, you're going to get a little bag. So, and we have a lot of bags. So get your trick-or-treat bag.
We could sell bags. We could do
Yeah,
that.
bags. Yeah. And there was also toy companies that made like noisemakers and the jack-o'-lantern illuminated treat collector. These became staples. And so everyone's like, oh shit, this is a whole thing. And how much money did chocolate make? Yeah, we're going to hop on this.
Yeah, exactly. And then it just became a phenomenon.
And I know you're wondering, well, hey guys, wasn't this was made to dissuade pranksters from staying away from making pranks? Did it work? Yeah, no. Yes, it doesn't happen on Halloween anymore. It now just happens on October 30th, where it's called Mischief Night or Devil's Night or Damage Night or Goose Night. So after all this work to dissuade pranksters, the pranksters just were like, nah, actually, we'll just do it a day before and have candy.
I don't feel like I don't know. Obviously I wasn't around in the early 1900s, so I can't say. But just like from the stories I've heard though, like yes, obviously like the hoodlums are out there getting into trouble and that's kind of part of it, but I just don't feel like it's as like scary and violent as it probably used to be. I think it's tamer. It's more just like we're getting into some shit.
Sure. But it's still happened. I mean, I can remember growing up as kids and the Halloween day seeing many a tree in people's yards being covered in teepee,
Exactly, which is I guess that's the point I'm trying to make. Way tamer than like overall
down California. Yeah, exactly.
Like overall, I've TP'd many a tree in my day. A playful prank.
It's fun vandalism.
Exactly. Fun vandalism. Also, like breaking into haunted houses and stuff like that. Whereas it sounds like in the beginnings, before trick or treating was a thing, it was like I said, violent. Like it was a little more like people would get hurt.
Yeah.
A scarier thing, whereas it's more like fun vandalism. Sure.
Exactly. I just think it's really funny that after all this work, and even like I would say trick-or-treating as a tradition, huge success. Well done. You've made it, you did it. You've done it. And after all of that, we now recognize October 30th as an official prank night.
Yeah.
That it didn't dissuade, it just like maybe dissuaded on that day, Oh, but we would be remiss to say, of all the other people that jumped on this holiday, charity also got in there with UNICEF, where the United Nations International Children's Emergency Fund, where in addition to trick-or-treating, kids could also collect donations for UNICEF, which is so evil genius brilliant. That like you've got little kids dressed up coming to your door and going, can you give to the Children's Emergency Fund? Like, you're going to fucking say no,
Of course I can. Obviously. Yeah, no, that was a good one to bring up for sure. We have to discuss, before we wrap this up, though, we simply must discuss. I don't know if it's still a thing. Obviously, it's been a really long time since I was a kid, but it was 100% a thing in the 90s and in the 80s. We were told constantly that there were going to be fucking razor blades in our candy.
Check your candy.
Check your candy. It's going to be full of poison and razor blades. So like that was
really the thing. And I'm so happy you brought that up, because I have a really great excerpt from this book, Trick or Treat. Can I read it to you real quick? Because it kind of tracks where this came from.
Sure.
In 1964, a New York housewife named Helen File, gotta use that last name, was upset at a number of trick-or-treaters whom she thought were too old to be demanding candy and handed them packages of dog biscuits,
Mhm.
poisonous ant buttons, and steel wool. And within 3 years, because that's how urban legends happen, urban legends of children being given apples with razor blades, suffocated, and parents began to worry that maybe Halloween isn't that good of a thing. Stories of anonymous psychos hiding everything from arsenic to LSD and Halloween treats became rampant, especially following the case of 8-year-old Timothy Mark O'Brien.
Yes. This is the Candyman murder, right?
Yeah, who died in 1974 after eating a cyanide-laced pixie stick. That little Timothy's murder was eventually linked to his father, Ronald Clark O'Brien, but that didn't matter in the public imagination. It was already happened. Kid died, eating poison candy. And the fear of a madman who was out poisoning children on Halloween had already been introduced. And so, yeah, so that's how urban legends fly. There's one bad case, and now it's, do you have one in your neighborhood? How are your
Yep.
apples? Always check your candy.
Always check it. Yeah, I found those same stories that it got linked back. Also, it was just a mention of how this threat tends to be heightened and exaggerated when there is something kind of similar or something that can kind of play on those same fears. Another time when we saw just a really big upward exaggeration of your candy being full of poison and razor blades was after the Tylenol murders of the 1980s, where it's actually still an unsolved murder case. It's a really interesting story. You should look it up. But there were laced Tylenol was sold in stores and people died.
Jesus.
Yeah, it was a whole thing. It was not cool, and yeah, obviously someone was responsible for that. But so it's very easy to take that, which is a true thing that happened in the 80s, and then be like, well, you could eat, lace candy. You could, kind of take that fear and
Right.
attach it to this Halloween candy thing. Also, there have been sociological studies done on what is known as, I love this term, Halloween sadism.
Whoa.
That is the terminology, the academic terminology for this act of poisoning Halloween candy.
Jesus.
Halloween sadism. And luckily, the studies that have been done across the board, the threat is pretty egregiously exaggerated.
Yeah.
It really isn't much of a thing. Yes, we have these few instances where something along those lines has happened, but I couldn't find any stories. Obviously, your book doesn't have any stories of someone who was just handing out laced candy or where'd the razor blades thing come from? There are no stories of candy with razor blades
No.
in them in reality. But I read that is so burned into my memory. I just
But
always
that's
thought,
that's how urban legends go. It's like you have this base story, and then as the game of telephone of history goes through,
mhm,
you start being like, oh shit, how can we make this more fucked up and more dramatic and more,
yeah.
as we're retelling the story. And so eventually you start with, yeah, there is LSD laced chocolate bars, to suddenly like, we've got knives in our apples,
Yeah. Yeah.
so
There's a loaded gun in that Snickers bar.
oh god. But yeah, but even after all of this, Halloween refuses to die. It keeps
It will
going.
not. It will not.
Halloween is eternal.
It's eternal, and it really is it's a beautiful tradition. It's a tradition I very much love. It's also the communal aspect of it. Like, there just is not another time in contemporary culture where, yeah, children can just go door to door and knock and get candy, and it's like this safe, happy thing. And like,
Mhm.
because there's a lot of trust in trick-or-treating too.
Yeah, yeah,
That's nice to me.
it is. I think I mean, I've been away from being in a suburban neighborhood since I was a kid, and I've kind of reminisced and wondered, is it all gone? Or maybe I'm not seeing it because haven't lived in a neighborhood during trick or treating in years, but I have seen it basically pivot and emulate it in different ways. Like I lived in New York City and I would see it. They wouldn't come to our doors in the apartments, but they would go from corner store to corner store,
Yeah.
and that's how the tradition kept going. So the trick-or-treating still lives on, I think, in different ways. I think it's worth noting that different areas do it different ways.
Yeah,
Like there was
exactly.
also, when I was a kid, you can go to the mall and trick-or-treat from door to door in the mall from each of the
I
stores.
think that's still a thing.
Yeah. Okay.
Just speaking of from around where we grew up, I think it's still pretty similar to how like it's still you go down the block, you like go door to door, and I'm pretty sure I've heard some ads on the radio about like trick or treating at the
Good.
mall, so that's still a
Cool.
thing. Don't they do like a zoo thing too, like trick or treating at
Oh
the
yeah,
zoo?
yeah, they do, like a midnight, or not midnight because they're kids, but like 8 o'clock, trick or
Yeah,
treating.
yeah.
I do remember in high school, like the pride I kind of got when I was like, I'm gonna be handing out the candy this year. And I'd stay home and watch, the sci-fi Halloween marathon, whatever was on, and hand out candy. I loved that. I can't wait for that to happen again. Hopefully it
Yeah,
will.
totally. I was definitely the kid that took trick-or-treating super seriously. Like, I was
Yeah.
not fucking around. Like, I was there to get the biggest haul, and I was typically the kid that was out, like, later than all the rest of the kids. I have a distinct memory of maybe, like, 5th or 6th grade, going out with my friends, and then, like, my friends had to go home, and I was like, "Whatever, chumps," and I just, like, kept going door to door getting
Yeah.
candy to the point that like it was almost completely like pitch black out, and I remember like being at someone's door and they were like, where are your parents, like where
Too many questions, ma'am. Give me the candy.
exactly. It's like, is this Halloween or is this Halloween? Like
Your light is on. That is the telltale sign that you are open for business.
and I am here for the candy. Just pass it on over.
Gosh.
Thank you very much.
I have such good memories. I remember there was one Halloween when I was a kid, and it was at this time we had lived out. We called it out in the country. We're kind of outside of the main city of Sioux Falls, and I went up to one house, and they had what I thought was a big stuffed scarecrow sitting at a lawn chair at the front door, and I went and knocked, and being a naive little 8-year-old, being like, "Oh, I'm waiting for candy," and then the scarecrow turned out to be an actual man and jumped out. As a kid, you don't see that coming, and that just brings more joy, and I love little ways that people spice up the holiday and do things like that.
Yeah. And also stuff like, that also just reminded me, yeah, because I used to love that shit too. And also the people that like aren't gonna be home and so they leave like a bowl of candy on the
Yes.
front porch. Like, what's that so
Please take
nice?
one.
Yeah. And you never do.
No, you take half that bowl. Yeah.
But it's still so nice. Like, it's just a cool thing that we communally, like collectively as humans, we're just like, yeah, this is what we'll do on this night every year,
Yeah. Yeah.
And it does bring a lot of joy to a lot of people.
We'll probably get into this because I know in the future we'll definitely do like a haunt and a maze episode. I would love to do that. But I just thinking about candy and Halloween and being a kid. Did your local grocery store ever make little mazes out of like Coke boxes?
Yeah.
I just had that memory come to me, and I always loved it. If you're not from the Midwest, Hy-Vee is a big
Oh,
grocery chain.
beautiful. Love Hy-Vee.
Beautiful.
Shouts out Hy-Vee.
Hy-Vee, and you would come in and they would have just like Coca-Cola boxes, 12 packs, and they would make an actual, have like 1,000 boxes. They would make a maze that you walk through,
Yeah.
and it's not scary. It takes like 2 seconds to walk through it, but that effort is what I love about this holiday.
Yeah, exactly. Just that little extra something. It just and yeah, and it's interestingly with Halloween, it feels often like people don't even mind doing it. Like they're happy to do the
Thrilled
extra
about it.
thing.
Yeah,
They're
yeah.
excited. They're excited to buy the candy to give to the kids. They're happy to do these little extra things, and it's a beautiful time. There's a real lovely sense of community that comes with trick or treating.
Mhm.
And yeah, just even at its core, a sense of taking care of each other, right? Like
Exactly.
we're just giving for no other reason but that you showed up at my door. Like that's
Yes.
something we can take into our daily lives, you know?
Oh, it's the best time of the year.
Best time of the year. Best time of the year. Yeah, I'm curious to see. I'm sure we'll see different examples of how people kinda handle. I don't even know what Halloween's gonna look like. I don't know, because I know I've been seeing some ways people, like, kind of trying to figure out how trick-or-treating could work, and, like,
Mhm.
obviously some cities are banning it, and, like, and
Yeah,
I'm interested to see what actually happens and how people handle
handle it.
that,
Yeah.
or how they get creative, because
Mm,
if nothing else, like, human beings are adaptable, right? We adapt to things
hell
and we
yeah.
figure out ways to do things in new ways.
Right, exactly. Think speaking on the creativity, I saw on Instagram, I think it's in Brooklyn, where a homeowner made a dragon candy chute from his front door to the street. That is a fun, creative way of like put your hands in front of the dragon,
Mhm,
and then the
mhm.
candy will shoot down as I drop it in, and that's like a nice socially distanced way to keep it going. So yeah, I'm excited to see more instances.
Yeah, my cousin did make a dragon one, but he lives in Chicago, in the suburbs of Chicago, and he made like a chute from their door too. And
Yes.
I was like, that's fun.
I wonder if this will, like, making more, in Halloweens in the future when we're not, in a pandemic and have to socially distance. I wonder if shoots
Will
will
remain.
stick. Yeah,
Yeah,
because 'cause they're just
because
so
it's
fun.
exactly, because it's just fun. Exactly.
And in 50 years from now, we're like, "Where'd the shoot come from?" And you'll be, like, old and hopefully still alive and be like, "I remember when the year that almost wasn't Halloween,
The
and
year
we
was 2020, and
and it was a nightmare."
but we
Oh,
persevered, we prevailed, and we
right.
had Halloween.
We had Halloween. What is it gonna look like for you this year? What is some traditions you're gonna do?
Like, what am I gonna do on Halloween this year?
Yeah.
Basically, just hang out with my very small group of friends that I've been with.
Mhm.
We're all gonna get into our costumes. So me and, my group costumes, there's 4 of us, and then, like, we have 2 friends who's, they're basically, like, their Halloween plans is just to get in costume and, like, roller skate around. So we're just gonna, like, hang out in costume and, like, roller skate. That's, like
Hell yeah. Hell yeah.
that's kind of the plan. A friend of mine who has a very big backyard was like, "We could probably do some, like, jack-o'-lanterns outside," you know? So we'll probably do that. We'll probably do some jack-o'-lantern carving.
Hell yeah.
Obviously, none of the crazy partying that tends to go on Halloween, but we'll still have a good time. I'm excited
Yeah.
about it. What
Yeah.
about you?
Well, it's gonna be home this year, and that's okay. We usually have a Halloween party. That's how we've done it in the last few years. Sadly, we've moved out of New York, and we're here right now. But I won't miss my yearly tradition of watching Trick or Treat, my favorite Halloween movie. If you haven't
Yes.
seen it, it wasn't always mainstream, and now I think it's basically there. But I don't care.
Oh,
It's
yeah,
still
it's
great.
blown up.
It's
It's like,
blown up.
people love it.
People love it, but it holds up. It's still good, and we got to keep blowing it up. So Michael Dougherty makes a Trick or Treat too. We have to will it into existence. It is this great anthology. It's just all about the rules of Halloween and all these different stories, all loosely connected about on Halloween night. So check it out if you haven't. It's so good. Trick or Treat, and I'll probably watch 1 or 3 of the Halloween movies because I love it so much. And then drink a lot of pumpkin things. Like right now, I'm
Yeah.
drinking a pumpkin beer called you would love this, the Great Pumpkin Spice,
Aw.
and it's got little peanuts all over in a pumpkin patch.
Yes, I do love that.
The Great Pumpkin Spice.
I
So
love
shout out
it.
to Platoon Brewing Company for this really adorable. And amongst the peanuts in the pumpkin patch, talking about mainstream, there's Sam from Trick or Treat just hanging out in the
Oh
background.
my goodness, it's just all of it, all rolled
It's
into
all of it.
one.
I love that Sam has become this icon of Halloween, and I hope it brings more people to watch that movie.
He's pretty cute. Like,
He's
he's a
so darn cute.
pretty cute.
And then you see what's under the mask, and it's less cute.
But it's, like, still cute somehow. Like,
Yep.
that's the interest, like, yeah, it's obviously creepy, but it's, like, still kinda cute. Like, because he's
Mhm.
still got the little body, and you're like, "Oh, okay." Like,
Yeah. Hell
yeah,
yeah.
he's a cute little guy.
Well, I'm excited all the same. This has been a different Halloween, but Halloween all the same, and we love it so much. And I'm gonna put all my hopes and wishes into 2021, being a full blown. I'm gonna jet set all over the place, go to all my haunts again, do everything. I cannot wait.
Brian around the world, just Halloween tourism all
I'm
over
gonna
the
be
place.
exhausted.
I'd be so tired.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess that's how we'll round it out. Happy Halloween, everyone. We're gonna take a 1 week break after this. Corey, you're traveling, and I'm gonna be moving next week.
Yeah, we
So
need a post Halloween breather. We need to just
right. So
soak it up and just relax for a minute. But yeah, this is a year-round spooky podcast, so we will be back. No worries.
yep, second week of November, we'll be back to talk about spooky shit. And in the meantime, let us know how you're celebrating Halloween this year. I know it's different, and I'm so curious how people are doing it. Get in touch with us. We're dying to hear about it.
Yeah, Instagram at Happy Harvest Horror Show, Gmail, Happy Harvest Horror Show at gmail.com. Send us an email. Yeah, just we're around. You can find us.
Yeah, absolutely.
We have a listener mail, a fun one that we wanted to
Yeah.
read and respond to. What do you got, Brian?
Well, yeah, we got an email from Jillian. Thank you so much for emailing in. This is really great to hear. And this was in response to our 90s Gateway Horror episode. And she says, "Hi, Corey and Brian. Just finished listening to the 90s Gateway episode. When y'all were talking about kids finding everything out on YouTube, I was like, my girlfriend's son is 6 years old and he is glued to her phone watching YouTube all day. He watches gaming playthroughs and definitely does not know what he's watching, but he's very smart and picks up on a lot. Anyways, one of the gamers he watches must have been playing some Pennywise game because this boy is now obsessed with Pennywise. Good on him. Everything he does has to be it related. This kid's my hero. He even wants to be Pennywise for Halloween, but of course no one makes child-sized Pennywise costumes.
Oh,
So he settled on a Pennywise tote bag from Spirit. Hell yes. I just thought it was so funny how you were absolutely right. Kids today will get their spooks from watching gamers on YouTube 24/7. And my girlfriend's daughter, on the other hand, is only 3 and is obsessed with the movie The Witches. This girl has good taste. Based on the Roald Dahl book and starring Angelica Houston, this kid's movie was made in 1990 and is absolutely horrifying. Agreed. The makeup and costuming for the transitions of the witches from human to witch is just true terror, and I know I would not have been able to handle it at 3 years old. I was hoping you would mention this in the podcast, of course, but in case you didn't know about it, I wanted to tell you. Look it up. It's so scary. I totally agree. That scene, that transition between witch and human was horrifying. I slap on my wrist for not bringing that up in that episode because that was a mark of my childhood as well. Jillian was born in 1995, and her favorite kid horror movies were The Haunted Mansion, which I love that you brought that up with Eddie Murphy. Monster House, also love that movie. Scooby-Doo, and literally any Halloween episode on any TV show. I definitely related hard to the whole Halloween nostalgia for our generation. Thank you, Jillian, for writing in. This was a true joy to read.
I love that little baby Pennywise. That's so
Baby
cute.
Pennywise. It also made me think about when she said every Halloween episode of any TV show. Just a quick little plug for a contemporary show. Any Halloween episode of Bob's Burgers is pure comfort food.
Yes,
So
it's my
good.
favorite. I literally, that's so funny you said that. As I was eating dinner before we got on this episode, I was watching The Haunting again
Oh
because
my
it's
gosh, it's
like
so
my
good.
favorite. It's my favorite. I love Bob's Burgers so much, and yeah, their Halloween episodes are so good and so.
So good.
Yeah, so clever and warm and just so well done. We should do somewhere in the future. I think it'd be fun to do kind of like our My Favorite Vampire, like do like our top 5 favorite episodes, like top 5 favorite Halloween episodes of
Hell
shows.
yeah. I would
I
love
think
to
that
do
could
that.
be fun.
Yes.
So that's an idea for the future. But thank you, Jillian, for writing in.
Yes,
Love
appreciate it.
I love hearing about spooky little kids. Like spooky kids are
Always.
my
Always.
favorite.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, and if you wanna be just like Jillian, which you should, because she's rad, write into happyharvesthorrorshow@gmail.com. We wanna hear about your Halloweens, how you're pivoting or adjusting or how you're celebrating this year.
Getting creative. What you doing?
Getting creative. Yeah, and, we'll catch you guys in a couple weeks. It's gonna be fun.
Have the best Halloween, y'all.
Happy Halloween. Bye.
Bye.